Alrighty everyone, welcome back. As we get closer to the very end of March of 2023 here, it only means that we're getting very much nearer to Chapter 21 of The Mandalorian. A lot of fans are anticipating this chapter after seeing the last one that had a couple of surprises here and there by Jon and Dave. But beyond all of that, we know that Jon and Dave are trying to do even be announced, of course, at Star Wars Celebration and D23 and all these different events. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind executives, the board, Bob Iger, the CEO, as well as Kathleen Kennedy and Leslie Headland having their fair share of, problems with the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew. It's just been an ongoing list of problems back and forth. It's going to be a very big deal. That's going to add on to the quote-unquote second phase of the Star Wars universe, or if you want to call it technically the third phase. But beyond all of that, what fired Disney CEO Bob Chapek had to say about Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy actually comes out as a big surprise. Something that Chapek has been coming out and about, talking a little bit more about his experience over at Disney, dealing with Lucasfilm, dealing with, of course, Kathy Kennedy and all these different things. However, beyond all of that, with a number of issues arising with both the Acolyte and the fans later this year. However, it's described that fired Disney CEO Bob Chapek was able to offer more truths about Kathleen Kennedy and her time at Lucasfilm, where he was able to offer the following details to the community. Just left, I had just came in. I didn't know what to expect running the show here. But one thing I learned was that Lucasfilm needed a big change. The leadership there was very flawed, and the way that Kathy Kennedy was running things were a big problem not just to me, but also to the board and our executives here. She didn't really treat everyone with great care and created the very judgmental atmosphere at Lucasfilm when I came to visit. It wasn't the best place to be at the time. She did indeed have these plans to completely rid of Lucas's stories through her upcoming shows at the time, and that seemed to bother many of the Lucasfilm employees that have been there for a very long time. We are talking about before the sequels were even released. This most certainly probably has to do with some of the Lucasfilm employees there that were being very judgmental against other employees. And this is exactly why we've been talking about how there has been a divide, not just between the fans, but also between Lucasfilm as a company, surprisingly. There is an internal division that has been going on ever since the release of The Last Jedi. There's no doubt about that. You have a lot of, employees that are very loyal to Lucas and his work on the originals and the prequels. And then you have some of the more recent hires that were more loyal to Kathleen Kennedy's work on the sequel trilogy, right? And so you get this mixture of creative views there, and they want nothing to do with Lucas's treatment of the franchise, basically, is what was going on. You guys may remember that leaked image, I don't know if you guys saw it years ago, where it was like taped on the end of a cubicle where there was a project at the time. And that was a very big deal. That was very film, but I digress. On to the next thing about what Chapek has to say here comes a little bit more as a surprise. So he goes on to elaborate. The company absolutely was tainted with Kathy's leadership, and I don't think I have ever seen a judgmental workplace such as this one in all my years in the industry, and working with many others out there. With Bob Iger now in, I'm not quite sure what he's really up to, but he's making some drastic alteration in how employees are treated and such. In the meantime, I can confidently say that my departure was a blessing in disguise, since I tried to do better there, but it was one of the most difficult tasks to complete during my days as CEO, trying to find better leadership for Lucasfilm to propel this brand onto a better path. In all, Lucasfilm is a very toxic workplace, and we know this based on what's been going on with Skeleton Crew, what's been going on with the Acolyte, right? Those are two prime examples, because they're mainly driven by Kathleen Kennedy, and that's when you get those kind of issues. So Bob Chapek really putting it out there, really kind of putting Lucasfilm on the hot seat about what they really are. What they really are, all leadership is also very judgmental there. And a part of that leadership is Kathleen Kennedy. You also have the Vice President Brennan on people and stuff like that. So it really is just a big mess right now, and thankfully, get somebody new. And this is going to take place over the course of the next 2 years. This is to actually create a consistent workflow on a wide scale, not just being led by John and Dave making shows or whatever have you, but to actually have a fully, wide-scaled studio that can make consistent, good Star Wars material. And that's all that they want to do. So that's going to take over the course of the next 2 years to gain, full power over the Lucasfilm company, to really have a lot of employees that are just all about what John and Dave want to do and what kind of vision that they want to actually, meet expectations for with the fans. So Bob Chapek is really right about all of this, is that he really tried to make change. You guys may recall months ago where he himself even, came out and said that Lucasfilm needs to actually take a bit of a shift. That was the first big hint where you thought things were going wrong when it came to Bob Chapek trying to make change. So anyways, with that being all you guys have to say about Chapek, laying down the truth here about Lucasfilm and Kathy. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.